Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. A few days later, the silver weapon samples arrived. Lucas says that it's a well-balanced sword. The stats are pretty decent too. Taku says good and he'll get them to make more, and to think of it as expendable, it's okay to break it. Evangeline asks if he's sure, saying it looks expensive. She thrusts with the silver spear, and they start hype-manning her. She tells them to stop reacting to the small stuff, but Taku likes teasing her. He says she's good even though it isn't a lance. She says they are basically the same, then she shoots a stray at Lucas saying she could handle a long sword as well as the oldie. Taku tells them to stop bantering and get their equipment, since it's time to explore the next part of the dungeon. It jumps again to them all teleporting to the safe zone, and Taku says he's only brought the main party. Since only they will be fighting Celine Dion, they need to power level. It would be nice to level them all to the point they get their ultimate skills, but that's at around level 50. And they are a bit away from that. And the only two who will probably unlock new skills will be him and Damien, assuming they hit level 35. Coco sees them all, and asks how they all look thinner than last time, saying they need more food. Taku quickly changes the topic, asking where Calibe is. She says he went to the front of the dungeon for mats. Taku says he didn't expect Calibe to leave his post, but at this point he's much stronger than them, so he'll surely be fine. He tells Coco he has a favor to ask, and she asks what he needs. He tells her he needs this seal removed. She asks if she's sure, saying that it's the infamous loser's pass, and he might lose his will. He says not to worry, and he reminds him that if he doesn't win the fight at the end he can't return. He says they'll win. Coco laughs saying Calibe was right, and they are good. She starts to release the seal, telling them she'll be waiting. Taku thanks her, then explains that it's basically just a secret passage. They skip stage 4, and go straight to stage 5. However, stage 5 is where the difficulty gets nuts, but that it's actually the best choice for them, since the Coliseum is optimized for gimmicks. Before coming here, he warned the party. We see that the path will lock all of their skills, and the path becomes unusable if they fail. Taku tells them all it's time to go. Everyone looked reluctant about going, but it was a natural response. Taku drops the torch into the hole, saying it's not that deep, and he tells the rest he'll be going first. He starts to go down the ladder, and he wonders if the darkness had a will, what would it do? He says it feels like it's eating away at his ears. As he goes deeper, the sounds of the darkness begin to sound like laughter, or speaking. Taku says he's scared, and that going down further makes him afraid. But he has to do this, as it's the only way to clear this. He makes it to the bottom, and the sounds of the darkness disappeared entirely. He picks up the torch, and looks at the path of the loser, and he explains that speedrunners often break through the Coliseum by using this path. Lucas makes it to the bottom, and Taku asks him how he's feeling. He asks for a quick break, and he says yeah, just wait for everyone to get down. Taku tries to comfort him, since their skills are locked down here. Then Damien screams and falls. He starts to apologize to his friend Van. Taku makes him snap out of it. Damien asks him for him to hold his hand. He does so, then Juju makes it down, saying that was quite a fascinating curse. He quickly comments on how she's got a serious stanky leg going on. She says that she isn't scared, it's just from the climb down. Then she sees Taku and them all shivering, and he says to join them all. Evangeline does a superhero landing, and says that she's hella scared. She makes a face like she's made her mind up, then runs over to them. A bit later, Damien says he feels fine now. But Taku says it's fine for them to rest longer, and there's no need to be embarrassed about being scared. They all use Damien as an excuse to rest longer. Each of them have terrible pasts, although they don't know how deep each of their wounds are. They are all together, so their bonds will strengthen. After resting for about an hour, they began to move. Due to how long the path is, it gave Taku the perfect chance to explain to the party about the gimmicks and tricks. After walking for a few more hours, they finally reach the end of the path, which is another ladder going up. Taku says it won't have a curse this time. Then says it's time to head up. Lucas goes out first, then helps Taku up. Then the chain continues, and Lucas says this place seems like enemy territory. Taku says there's no way. We hear a new voice, asking how long it's been since a challenger showed up. Spotlights begin to turn on, and point in the middle of the Coliseum, shining down on them all. Evangeline says he didn't mention the fact they'd be entering the stadium right away. He says he didn't know either, and wonders why the entrance is in the middle. He must have forgot it'd be the same as in game. Fireworks also begin to fire off. And the man from earlier says he can't remember the last time he had a guest. He's introduced as the gladiator king Jackal. Taku says this is the NPC boss. Jackal starts to hype up the crowd, and we see some monsters in the seats. Jackal says he doesn't know where the contenders came from, but it's the pathetic adventurer party. Lucas and Evangeline are offended. Jackal says the enemy is something he's been waiting for a while. It's none other than their cute chimera. We see that it's only this from wave 1, and it's a level 45. And we see the winning probability odds are 1 to 100. Taku is surprised by this. And says he explained this already to the members, that there are 100 goblins in the stand who vote, and 99 of them think the chimera will win, which is how the odds came out to be like this. It's only like this since 100 versus 0 isn't allowed. They all think it's over for the main party. Taku says this makes him irritated, as the chimera runs at them. He tells Damien to let him use the Black Queen. Taku says the probability odds are an important factor. In this place each person's odds affect the first attack. So the chimera's first attack will become 1.01 times stronger than usual, while theirs will be increased by 100 times. This is part of the trick to winning in the Coliseum. Jackal starts to shoutcast the fight, and jokingly says look at the toothpick of a weapon, and shakes his finger saying that it won't even leave a scratch. Taku tells him to quit yapping, as the bullet pierces through the chimera's 2 heads, causing its meat chunks to splatter across the floor, leaving Jackal confused. Taku says he's glad he's quiet now, and he's loud in the game too. Then we see he's the one who benefited from the experience points of the boss. Taku mockingly asks what the next matchup will be. The next wave is a giant frost general. Odds are 1.11 to 10. Jackal again starts to hype up the general's entrance. Jackal says that he can't wait to see what kind of performance the general shows today. But it couldn't show anything, as it was one shot again by the George Washington Blicky. Wave 3 is the Black Dragon's daughter, and the odds are 1.25 to 5. Jackal stutters while hyping this one up. He says 8 wings, 12 legs, and it's missing a tail, but she's still very powerful. As she's the Black Dragon's daughter, Kilishan, he wonders if she'll overcome her father. But she gets instantly killed too. Wave 4 is the Goblin God, level 48, and the odds are 1.43 to 3.33. Jackal says he was avoiding this, but it's the war god of their little goblin spectators. He's an 8-handed fighting machine, who is ready for everything. Except being shot in the chest by Taku, which makes the goblins start to tear up. Taku says this is music to his ears. They pissed him off. Finally, we're on to wave 5, which is 2 Fallen Bloods. The odds are 1.66 to 2.50, the mobs are bloodkins. Jackal says he can't take it anymore and runs off. Someone else begins to take over, saying that he left to get the best quality monsters. Fallen Blood are also called Fallen Vampires. They are vampires that couldn't feed on humans for a while and deteriorated. They lose all sense of reasoning, and turn to beasts. The Fallen Bloods begin to charge towards Taku. He takes aim and fires. The Fallen Blood dodges, but it barely scratches it. It still explodes. Taku says it'll explode just from being brushed up against, and it's time to end the games here. He says they'll use the last one as a training dummy. The rest step up, and Taku says the odds are 60 to 40, but this'll hopefully show the dumb goblins who to vote for. The fight is over in seconds. Taku says he thought for sure it would be a better fight. Taku wonders if it's just because it's closer to a husk than an actual vampire. Taku asks Jackal if he's got anything stronger, or nah. Jackal says it's a seasonal monster that was freshly caught. We see wave 6 is a single level 50 vampire, and the odds are 2 to 2. Taku says perfect. Jackal begins to hype it up, saying it's a self-proclaimed aristocrat, then says he's tired of the introductions, just go fuck them up. The light is shining on the vampire, and we learn his name is Bernardo, who is yelling about this treatment, saying Jackal isn't safe. Jackal is surprised, and Bernardo says the only reason Jackal is allowed to use the arena is because the great commanders permitted it. He says he's a part of Celine Dion's family. Jackal starts to feel worried, then Bernardo's arms go flying through the air. Jackal says he's heard enough yapping, and that he smells like iron, saying who cares about Celine, whatever. He caught and dragged Bernardo here, so he doesn't care about whose ass he kisses. If he acts out of line again, he'll cut his head off. He says he'll shove garlic down his throat if he doesn't understand. Bernardo looks pissed, but holds it back, saying damn it. His arms begin to float back toward him, and he says he doesn't know where they are from, nor is he hungry. He reattaches his arms, and says he has to kill them all. Taku laughs, saying they plan to kill him too. It'll be their first time fighting a vampire, so they should get the experience of it. Taku tells them all that before they fight, It's time to get slapped on their palms. He grabs Juju's hand, then smacks it with his wand and we see she gets a 20% increase to elemental damage. She's surprised, but the rest give her a thumbs up. Taku tells her it only works once a day, so don't try and get hit often. She looks at him like he's a weirdo. Bernardo is annoyed they are doing this in his presence, and leaps at them saying he'll squeeze all of their blood out. Taku tells everyone to get ready. He explains to us that vampires have two general fighting methods. One is blood magic, by using their own blood, or others. Second is using their bodies. They have incredible regeneration and their strength is superior to a human's. Most vampires take these two skill trees, and focus on one side, and if they master just one of them they'll become a disaster. Unfortunately that isn't the case for Bernardo. He eats an attack, and Taku says that he seemed to have been lazy in both. A large area has been painted with his blood. It may seem like a one-sided fight, but that's not the case. Since he's still a vampire, his regeneration is Wolverine-like. But there's still a way to beat it. He asks Damien if he can see his core, and he says yes, and it's like the entire body is made of blood. The core isn't in one place, it just breaks and reforms over and over. Taku wonders what to do, and says while fighting in the game he would put various healing reduction artifacts around, and cut them to pieces with silver star weapons. But it's too early in the game to get those artifacts, and they don't have the actual star silver weapons. And they can't one-hit him either. Taku also realizes that Bernardo has been staring at him for a while, and on cue he leaps at Taku saying he'll take his blood. Taku realizes that he must be the target solely because of his low level. Bernardo goes to bite him, but catches an arrow into the side of his head instead. As Damien was ready to protect him, Evangeline and Lucas are also angry. They both stab him in the chest. Taku realizes something, then tells them to leave their weapons inside of him. Bernardo says there's no way they think this would be a fatal wound. Taku says of course not, then tells Juju it's her turn. She says that she sees what he's going for. She begins to imbue lightning to the weapons inside of him, and uses them as a lightning rod for her attack, causing him to be burnt from the inside out. Damien says he sees it, then fire a shot at Bernardo, piercing his core. He screams as he's falling, then fades to dust. Taku says although he was weak, he's got some clues from this. First they strike with a combination of silver weapons and magic, and once the core is revealed, Damien will snipe it. He smiles, saying they just need to take it one step at a time. Jackal jumps back into the arena, saying well done, and they've proven their worth. Now they will face him, the Gladiator King. It's the final wave, and Jackal is level 75. There is no winning probability on this fight. Taku sweats in anticipation, and he sees the goblins have all been killed. Jackal says that he didn't think allowing for odds to determine the fight was smart. Taku explains how his first ability is to always avoid the first attack. And without the odds, if they fight him they are going to die. He's a level 75 after all. Jackal says it's been a while since he stood in the arena, and they need to show him their fighting spirit. He dashes in towards them, saying to show their strength. Taku says they came here, because he has a way to nuke the boss. Taku says that Everblack has not forgotten him. Jackal stops in his tracks out of confusion. Taku repeats it. The true identity of Jackal is that he's a special agent dispatched by the Everblack Empire decades ago. While exploring he was kidnapped, and ended up living in the Coliseum. Therefore in the game if you showed him Prince Ash's memento in game, you skip the battle, by making him think Lucas was part of the royal family. Jackal asks him who he is, and Taku introduces himself, while showing his family emblem. Jackal drops his sword, and falls to his knees saying he thought he's been completely forgotten. He thought he was forgotten about, and he tried to forget it too. Taku tells him that even if he does forget, the Empire never forgot about him. And even if the Empire did, he vows on his name as Prince he will remember him. Jackal starts to cry, saying the time he spent here wasn't in vain. He says that seeing how happy he has made him feel guilty, but oh well it is what it is. Taku says he didn't doubt that Jackal was sincere, he just wonders how the hell he's become so docile in comparison to how he was acting just a few moments ago. He went from boss to normal NPC. Taku asks if he'd be able to help them in the dungeon search moving forward, since he's incredibly strong, having him would make it way easier for them. Jackal explains that his body belongs to the Coliseum, so if he leaves he cannot use his power. Jackal starts to apologize profusely, but Taku says it's fine. Then he says he's looking for an item called the Shard of Darkness, asking if he has it. Jackal says yes, and to tell him how many he needs. Taku says in the game, he turns into a normal NPC and gives you the Shard of Darkness. He decides to start with 3, it's a material for crafting top tier items. He puts it into his pocket inventory, saying it'll be needed for the star silver weapons. Jackal asks if he needs help with anything else, saying he'll help with anything he can. Taku asks if there's anywhere they can sleep, saying the party is worn out so they need to rest. We see Juju sit down on a bed, and Evangeline starts to jump on it out of joy. Juju says she didn't expect someone so ferocious to become such an ally, saying Taku is incredible. He awkwardly laughs, since it's a strategy that already existed. He should be thanking his brain for remembering. We see a burrito in the shape of Evangeline, asking if everyone will be sharing this room. Taku says yeah, it's the only room. Evangeline says there are 2 ladies though, and Taku says yeah, that's what he'd call them, then asks where the ladies are. He says he sees 1 cockroach, and some kind of blood machine. Burrito raises up asking what he means cockroach. Taku asks what she'll do about it. She pulls out a pillow saying this, and Taku pulls out 2 saying he'll teach her a lesson. Damien and Lucas enter after bathing to see Taku being absolutely mogged by Evangeline. He tells Lucas to back him up, and Lucas quickly says of course. He smacks Evangeline in the back of the head, and she says this is cheating, and tells Juju to help. She says she isn't picking sides, but Evangeline threatens to sleep in her bed. Juju quickly starts to raise pillows and bedsheets into the air. Taku calls for Damien's assistance, but Damien slumped. Then the sheets fly at Taku and Lucas, wrapping them into burritos of their own. Lucas apologizes. Taku tells him it isn't his fault, it's the Evil Lady Alliance. Juju starts to laugh, and Taku says he's never seen her like this. It was different from the fake smile she usually had, and it was genuine. Seeing her open up made him relaxed. It jumps to Taku dreaming, and he's reminiscing about an OG viewer who commented, saying his channel blew up. But he's about to get surgery soon, and he hopes Taku can give him some warm wishes. Taku wakes up gasping. Juju asks if he's okay, or if he's feeling sick. He says he's fine, but asks why she's awake. She says she woke up from her nap, then asks if he's sure he's okay, since it seemed like a nightmare. He tells her it's about something he regrets, and he keeps having recurring dreams about it. She says a lot of people experience that, and it happens to her a lot too, since she's full of regrets it's hard to sleep. She says everyone else is sound asleep. Taku says yeah he's sure they are sleeping well. Then we hear loud rumbling. Jackal bursts into the room saying they are being attacked, and vampires have invaded. We see a horde of ghouls, and the fighters of the Coliseum start to fight back. An all-out war has ensued straight in the middle of the arena. Taku says he can't believe he's seeing a war between monsters. He thought Bernardo was capping. Jackal says the vampires won't be able to break through so easily, and they'll make them leave with the taste of defeat. Taku asks if he'll be okay. Jackal says he's dealt with worse, he's the gladiator king after all. He starts to walk over, and lifts the exit tunnel saying to take it back, and since they've completed the Coliseum they can return on the loser's path. Taku thanks him, and Jackal says to go quickly so he can fight freely without worry. As Taku and the rest go to climb down, Jackal thanks him for remembering his name, and says that it was more than enough for him. Taku says that sounds like a death flag, so be careful. Jackal says he was just being sincere, then says he'll meet him again. Then hands him a bag saying it's a small gift, and that he'll be closing the door now. He closes it. At the bottom of the ladder, Taku looks at the bag of shadow fragments, and says it really seems like a death flag. Taku says it's time to go back, and claps some vampire cheeks. As they all start walking down the hallway, Evangeline says it seems way colder than yesterday. Taku sees Damien shivering too. Juju's breath is also cold. Lucas shouts saying something is dead ahead. Taku sees a small figure, and he can tell from the kid-like appearance that it's the Vampire King, Celine Dion in the flesh. Celine Dion says excuse me, then walks past the majority of the party and we see materials leaving his hand, as the group instantly realize their weapons were instantly destroyed. Celine sends them all flying throughout the air. Juju says that she'll stop him, but he glares at her magic and it disappears. She says impossible, then he sends her flying. He says it's time to talk, player, as he's very curious about him. Taku says with his bright red eyes he observed him quietly, and his gaze gave him goosebumps. He shouldn't be fooled by the childlike appearance, as he's hundreds of years old. Celine says player, do you have any interest in talking? Taku quickly says his name is Ash. Celine is confused and Taku keeps repeating it for him. Celine says it makes sense he has a name, but when you see an ant you call it an ant. He apologizes for being inconsiderate saying he didn't want to offend him, nor does he want to harm him. Taku says why hurt the party. Celine says subduing them without killing is a hassle, he just wants to talk. Taku says if he wanted them all dead it'd be easy, so it's certain he isn't here to eliminate them all now. Taku sits down, and says Celine should sit too, saying it'd be awkward to talk while standing. Celine looks lost, but decides to follow along. Taku asks why he's here, asking if it's about puberty, or career path. Celine says he doesn't know what those are, then asks how he killed Orlop. Taku asks who, and Celine says the queen of the spiders. Taku goes to call him a weeb, but realizes he must be talking about the forward base, and is surprised it wasn't just a boss. Taku says since it never appeared in game, he thought it was only something for the backstory. But no wonder she didn't die so easily, she was at the commander level. Celine says it seems like he remembered. Taku says yes, he almost died. Celine explains that she usually isn't in the front lines, but it was mating season so she needed human flesh. But he heard she was killed by a cannon. Taku says yes. Taku asks if he's here for revenge, and Celine says he doesn't care about the spider bitch, he told the king he'd do it for revenge, but he didn't mean it. Taku asks why then. Celine says he wants to die, and that he truly wishes to face death. He's been revived here 500 years ago, and wishes to go back. Taku wonders what the hell is going on. Celine cuts his throat, saying nobody could give him an injury, let alone kill him. However, Orlop, a commander like himself, was eliminated from a mere cannon. So he thought maybe Taku would be able to kill him too. He asks Taku if he can do it, and truly set him free from this, so he can return to his eternal sleep. Taku starts to sweat, saying this is nonsense, asking why it's a question if he can kill him. He says he came here to kill them all, that's the purpose of this. He starts to remember those in the tutorial being eaten, and gets angry. Saying of course, he'll kill all of Celine's family, along with his subordinates, along with even their king. He starts to remember the front count dying in his arms, and shouts saying he'll annihilate every single enemy, without leaving a single one behind. He starts to recall the blue flame for funerals, the cannon shots, the choir, along with the silence that followed the prayers. He starts to recall all of the named soldiers he met that have already went ahead into death, along with all of those that he never got to meet, or learn their names. That is his duty as a commander, and why he hates them so much. He tells Celine even if he didn't come here, he was going to kill him either way. Celine smiles, saying is that so? He begins to stand up, saying that he's happy even if the attitude is for show. But he can't figure out how such an insignificant create will be able to kill him. He asks if it's even possible. Taku slaps his hand away saying of course. And that in game he's killed him countless times already. Taku tells him to just wait and crawl up to his castle wall. Then he will do as he said, and end his life. Celine starts to genuinely smile, saying he'll see him soon then. He says he hopes it isn't a lie, and it seems like his henchmen want to fight, but he should stop them. Taku motions to them all to stop. Celine starts to fade out and says he will be looking forward to death. Then leaves the tunnel. Taku says if he wants to die so badly, he should just unalive himself. He tells the party to not be frustrated about the power difference, as they'll get their chance for revenge. It's time to go back, they have a lot to do. Back at the base camp, he sees Calibe holding something. Calibe says it's called the Devil's Mistletoe that grows in the deepest level of the dungeon. Taku recognizes it as the cursed branch and says they can use it to make equipment. Calibe says he can make a cursed blade that will reduce the healing ability of the enemy. Taku says if he can add this to a star silver weapon it'll be a hard counter for the vampires. He asks Calibe if he got hurt getting the branch, which makes him flustered, and he says he tripped. He clears his throat saying it's all he can do to help, but please kill that monster, talking about Celine. We see that Taku went up 10 levels, and is one away from his new skill. Damien has the ability for his. After sorting out the items from the dungeon, Taku says he got it, and it's a finished product. He says the Scream set should be complete now, and he wonders how lucky he was to get the full set, though Jupiter has the other 2 items. Taku says it's a bit sus, but he should just use them. He says he also ordered some stuff from the blacksmith, and he'll hand those out later. After organizing his items, he moved to the next location. He opens the door telling Ader to welcome him. Ader asks why he's here, and he says he needs to talk to him. Taku says this is his first time in Ader's room, and he looks around saying he seems to be living fine. He comments on how it's desolate, and aside from the documents he needed to process it was empty. It jumps to Ader being surprised about Celine visiting Taku, who tells him he only survived since Celine is a psycho, but if it happens again, how can he explore the dungeons? Ader starts to think about it, and says in the game this is a clear violation of rules if it was in the game. But this is reality, monsters and humans, stuff like this is acceptable. Taku says yeah, and that he's also used stuff that's only possible in reality. Like equipping Damien with 6 guns, but there's no way to guarantee next time they run into him they don't die, which would be game over. Ader tells him to wait, and he'll add some features to the achievement store. If Taku applies them, it'll prevent this from happening again. Taku looks at the shop and sees a boss detection radar for 5,000. He has 900,000 points, another one is an emergency escape bomb that is 45,000. Taku says rather than Ader blocking them, he's just telling him to detect then run. Ader says surely it's better than nothing. For those who don't remember, he's the director of the game. Taku buys it, and says it seems like it's applied. He tells Taku right now it may seem like a threat, but perhaps later he'll take advantage of this. Saying if they can find Taku in the dungeon, it means he can go find them in the dungeon too. Taku says that he's right. Ader says this is why he won't block it. He smiles, saying this stage will be rough as hell, but he believes Taku will break through them all. Taku says for a moment he seemed like a real director, rather than the fool he pretends to be. The next day at the blacksmith's shop, we see Jupiter holding the golden armor from the gargoyle. She asks Taku if she's allowed to enjoy it, and he says who other than her would. It's a good piece of equipment, but the negative trait gold lover is granted to the wearer. She already has it, so nobody else but her should wear it. He also gives her the scream set, and she now has the full set bonus. She's hesitant for a moment, but, thanks Taku. Saying she can't go to the front lines, and asks if Juju could take all of it instead. It jumps to Juju's room. We hear her coughing up a storm. She says it hurts more than usual, and it must have been because of Celine. She says she learned a lot from it though, and in his spell it contained a simple, but deep magical principle. She thought about making it hers, and she starts to feel like she's on the cusp of the next level. However, she wonders how much she'd be able to use it in the future. And that she's getting closer to death every day. She wonders if she'd have lived longer without learning magic. But deems them useless thoughts. Taku knocks on her door asking if she's awake. She opens the door, asking what's up, but he sees her bleeding from the mouth with a rag covered in blood. Then she is surprised, as she sees Jupiter standing on the side. Jupiter sees the blood and starts to feel guilt-ridden, instantly, going back to her past. 10 years ago in a rural village, Juju is waking her up, telling her she needs to go work. Juju asks if she had a bad dream. She says no and sighs, saying she wants to sleep for longer. Juju asks if she isn't going to work, but she says that isn't it. We learn that she's the village guard. Even if it doesn't pay much, it was the only means of income for her family. Juju tells her to wake up, and she's made breakfast so make sure to eat, saying not to skip, as Jupiter often did. She asks Juju to feed her, and starts to talk her into it. Juju says she has no choice then. And starts to feed her. Juju asks how it is, saying she tried cooking it for less time. Jupiter says it tasted like straight ass. Juju barks, saying she can make it then. Jupiter says she can't cook. She lived her entire life on a battlefield, having others cook her meals. She doesn't know how to do any of the normal living tasks. Juju asks what she can do. Then she says only magic. But that she will be back in a bit. Jupiter sees everyone else is still asleep, and Juju made food for them all, and starts to hug her, saying she's so proud of her. Juju gets her off, then sticks her hand out, saying to give her money. They've used their living expenses. Jupiter asks how, saying she gave her some a while ago. Juju says there's too many people here. We learn she took in 10 kids, and feeding and clothing them all drained the money quickly. Jupiter has no money right now, and it's a while away from payday. She heads out, and Juju says if she has to steal, go get it, chanting money as Jupiter leaves. On the outskirts of town, Jupiter arrives at work. They salute her. She tells them to take it easy, nobody is watching anyways. She sits down, asking if anything happened. They say nope. Besides the smuggler they caught yesterday, nothing has happened so far. The smuggler tells them to think carefully. If they let him go, he'll give them 50% of the profits. He says their salaries are low, and they could use it. Jupiter tells him to quit yapping. The smuggler says he'll get to do his job, and they'll get free money. He pleads, saying it's a win-win for everyone. Especially for Jupiter, and he doesn't know why a mage is here, but with her help they could do some big business. Jupiter zaps right in front of his face, and kicks the cage, telling him to shut the hell up. She tells him who she is, and says even if she didn't have money, She'd rather starve than put her hands into smuggling. The man is in fear, and she says he made her feel like shit. He tells the rest to keep an eye on him, and an investigator will arrive tomorrow, so she'll go patrol the village. As she's walking, she spots a dead body on the beach, being carried away by some villagers. She says 5 years ago the town was peaceful, the empire's war of conquest gave rise to war refugees, the security was shaken from the borders and left an impact on the empire. She wants to live peacefully, until the kids grow up. But money is running low, and her job is exhausting. She started to crave for a cigarette, but because she lives with the kids and her wallet was thin, she quit a while ago. The old Jupiter is gone, she starts to wonder if there were any tobacco leaves in the smuggler's items. She sees a massive lightning strike out in the woods, and realizes someone is using magic. She runs over to see someone burnt to a crisp, as Juju is crying. She says she didn't mean to, but they broke in and threatened everyone. Juju, being the eldest, awakened as a mage. Jupiter comforts her, but notices that Juju is coughing up a storm, then sees blood pouring out from her eyes, nose and mouth. She quickly took her to a temple for healing. The priest says it's temporary, it isn't a cure, and from the magic scars Juju has, as the magic power flows backwards, she is talented. But from her previous wounds she cannot handle her own magic power. She will die, and won't live for long. The priest says none of the kids are going to live for long. Jupiter asks what she needs to save her, and he says to take her to the big temple in the capital. There she'll get the highest level of healing magic. It'll cost a lot of money though. Jupiter says she's too poor for that. The priest says she'll die soon. So feed her something nice, as she's skin and bones. Jupiter started to think, while she took them all in. She was just slowly killing them all, she's unable to provide proper treatment, and they are suffering through poverty. She started to curse her lack of money. Later that day she headed back to her post and kicks the cage of the smuggler to wake him up. She tells him to talk more about the deal he offered earlier, and we see she took a cigar from his stash. A few days later, the kids are asking what's with the bags she brought. She says her salary increased, and to check it out, all of the kids open the bags to find toys and clothes, and are all excited. Jupiter shows a book, saying she picked this up for Juju to read. She looks happy, saying she'll read it carefully. Then says she didn't do anything weird, right? Saying it's still far from her payday. Jupiter says she is sharp. Jupiter says she just had some saved up in emergency funds. So don't worry, and just enjoy reading. She says that they should make dinner together too. Juju says okay, then says that she called her food bad. Jupiter says she can't cook either, so the two started to cook while the kids all enjoyed their new toys. That night we see her outside, and she says she can't quit smoking again, as it suppresses her anxiety about committing a crime. Juju comes outside, and Jupiter tells her to get back inside since it's cold. She says she wanted to show her something, and shows that she has access to 3 elements, saying she thinks she has a talent. Jupiter is shocked, since the priest said magic will kill her. Juju tells her she wants to grow up just like Jupiter, and become a great mage. Jupiter tells her not to bother learning magic, saying she can feed her for the rest of her life, and promise her she won't use magic. Juju says she worked so hard to raise them though. So she wants to grow quickly and help her. Jupiter quickly hugs her, saying she's fine, and just to worry about enjoying her youth. Jupiter is clearly shaken by this, saying not to worry. But their time of wealth was short, as the investigators were smart and caught her. The healing of 10 kids in the capital was the deciding factor, as it was too expensive for a demoted soldier to handle. The investigators thought it was fishy, and investigated, causing the smuggler to rat out Jupiter. She didn't protest their claims as she did commit the crime. Jupiter was eventually dishonorably discharged, and her military career was over. She says it was all her karma, but she didn't regret it, as it allowed the children to get healed by high-level healing magic. But now she doesn't know where to earn money. A group starts to approach her, saying welcome to becoming a free soul. She asks if they are here to make fun of her. A man says he's not dumb enough to offend a mage, and asks if she's interested in becoming a mercenary. She gets annoyed, asking if they want her to become a henchman. The man says no, and she could be a hunting dog that they carry around. He says she needs a lot of money, right, and he starts to pull a case out, saying someone as skilled as her can make quite the fortune. She makes a decision, and reaches for the cigar box, and they light it up for her, saying, "Thanks for becoming a mercenary." It jumps back to her with Juju, and she's telling her she's going to be heading west as a country is having a war. Juju says it's going to be scary without her, asking if she can stay. Jupiter says she'll make a lot of money and be back soon, so don't worry. Juju knew that she had no choice but to leave, but she couldn't help being afraid. They both start to talk about how they have nightmares, and Jupiter tells her she'll have a good dream tonight, and to sleep well as they watch the stars in the sky. Afterwards, Jupiter wandered all over the continent as becoming a mercenary wasn't that good of money, so she soon started to do all kinds of dirty work. The honor she had as a soldier was of no use when her grandkids were in the picture. She threw it all away, gaining a new one. As the corrupt soldier who's gone mad for money, she's become a gold lover. Juju, having to be the older sister in charge of the rest, became mature quickly, and she often had to save her siblings. She became shrewd and harsh, and even learned magic to protect her siblings. She knew it herself, that she was talented in magic, or rather she had no other options. And just like that, 10 years passed by. As much as Jupiter and the kids grew apart physically, they grew distant emotionally too. Except for the occasional letter, their interactions decreased too. She sent money and letters. Juju grew into an adult, and she understood what happened 15 years ago, along with what Jupiter did as a mage. Jupiter grew old, and began to fear her granddaughter. While she took them in and raised them, their scars weren't erasable. Back to the present day in Juju's inn, Taku wonders what's with the rough atmosphere. He just wanted to hand out the equipment and laugh and giggle. He didn't think he'd be in the middle of family conflict. The innkeep keeps bringing food into the room, as she wants to leave a good impression. Jupiter finally speaks, asking if Juju wants to work as a mage. Taku is surprised. Jupiter brings up how she's vomiting blood and getting closer to death, yet still wants to be a mage. Juju tells her it's a dream to live as a mage, and that the food is delicious, telling Jupiter to eat up. Jupiter tells her this isn't living, she's speedrunning death. They keep talking back and forth and Taku starts to get brain damaged. Jupiter asks if Juju is planning to die before she does, and Juju says it's not a bad idea. Jupiter looks like she's made her mind up, and tells Taku she's sorry, but she'll take back what she said. She'll use all of the equipment, as it wouldn't have meaning giving it to a dying child. She grabs her stuff and starts to leave. Taku asks Juju if she's okay, saying her grandma, but she cuts him off, saying she's never once thought of her as her grandma. Taku says since he only heard about her past, he shouldn't interfere. But he tells her that Jupiter is right, and if magic is causing her to get worse, but she cuts him off saying that the enemy is a vampire lord, without her the defense won't be possible. Taku is silent since she's right, and he should just push her to her limits. Juju says everyone is fighting with their lives on the line, and she's the exact same. She says the meal was good, and stands up, then double checks asking him if he is paying. He says he wouldn't extort money from a dying kid, and now that he thinks about it, it seems like Ash has a lot of family issues too. 1 week later at Calibay's shop, Lucas is holding a sword saying it's the best he's ever held. It's an SSR Star Silver sword, and it has a heel cut effect. Taku smiles, since it has double damage to vampires, and ignores their defenses. Calibay tells Evangeline to hand him her lance. He says it'd be better to just make her a new one. But hers was made by adding a spear blade over her family's lance. It's a trick he wanted to try since it's not a game. That way she can keep her personal equipment effect, along with the bonus damage to vamps. Taku asks if she needs any further adjustments, and she says nope, it feels heavier, but it feels better. Calibay tells him later on he'll be able to fully awaken her lance. Taku says that makes sense as in the game he upgrades an SSR character's personal equipment. Finally we see Damien has star silver arrows. Calibay says he can tell his eyes are extremely good. Damien puts the arrow back into the quiver, saying he'll use it well. Calibay then shows a crossbow, saying it's a bonus as it is heel cut as well. Taku is surprised by it, then asks if it's too much for a bonus. Calibay proudly says it's from leftovers. Taku goes to pay him for the equipment, but Calibay says he doesn't want it. He just needs to kill Celine to make it fair. Taku sees Calibay is determined, and Calibay tells him to go fight well, and he'll be waiting to hear of their victory. They have their weapons now, and what's left is the strategy. Taku says when they return to Crossroad, they can pick up Evangeline's armor. She's surprised, and he tells her he put an order in for armor a while ago. She gets excited, asking if it's pretty armor. We see that stage 5 will start 9 days from now. Back at the blacksmith, she is surprised by the armor. Taku says not to get too happy, but she says this is hella ugly. He says she could call it sturdy instead. It was made from golem fragments, and in return for benefiting from physical and magic resistance, it adds a penalty on movement and attack speed. But with her unstoppable trait, she is immune to movement impairing status effects, so it's the best armor for an early to mid-level Evangeline. She says it died. Taku asks what, and she says her fantasy about armor. He tells her that practicality is more important than looks. She says that all other knights wear shiny armor, and they look cool too. She sighs, asking for him to promise her something, and to pick her pretty armor in the future. He smiles, knowing her future armor is beautiful, and the image of her wearing it was the promotional image for the game. He says he promises, so for now be patient and get ready to fight. Damien and Lucas laugh seeing how angry she is. Taku tells them all to go to his manor for dinner tonight. Outside his manor, he's talking to Ader. Then hears a footstep, and sees Jupiter asking what brings her here. She asks if he remembers her mentioning that she was spreading rumors across the continent, about how the monster front pays well. Taku says she mentioned this a few months ago, and that the prince pays well. He thought it'd have a positive impact in the long run. Jupiter says her former mercenary colleagues came after hearing about this. Taku says it's enough for a party, and she says she wants the party to be called the Old Hunters. Taku says he can't let her fight when she hasn't healed. She says that he'll need a skilled wizard to deal with the vampires. And not to worry, she's a mercenary, so just give her a chance, let her prove that she is still useful to him. He thinks about it, then says he needs to tell the chef to make more food. At the dining hall we see everyone's gathered. Juju looks over and spots Jupiter, and Jupiter quickly averts her gaze. Taku says he wanted to have them eat before this, but since they came early, they can talk now, then eat later, hopefully their appetites don't leave. Evangeline yells she's a pig. Taku starts saying he'll tell them about this defense battle. The most important info is that the boss will be the Vampire King, Celine Dion, and he has 1,000 lives. Evangeline is scared now. Lucas says they have to kill him 1,000 times then, asking how it'll be possible since doing it just once will be insanely difficult. Taku says killing him 1,000 times isn't possible, so they have to do it another way. Taku explains how vampires take the lives of others, and use it as their own, and Celine stands above the rest as the pinnacle of vampires. Taku says in the past Celine's army was wiped out, but he doesn't know why. But when all of Selene's subordinates died, he didn't abandon his men. Noblesse oblige, because a ruler is responsible for his troops. Celine split his vitality into 1,000 pieces, and distributed them to his subordinates, reviving them. That's the origin behind the vampire army. They have to kill every single ghoul or else Clean cannot die. Which makes him immortal until then. So they don't necessarily have to face Celine, and using the tactic he's prepared they'll isolate and immobilize Celine, while the rest of the soldiers wipe out the vampire army. Then they all jump Celine and end the battle. This is how the flow should go. Next he'll teach them how to defeat them. He's going to go into great detail, so make sure to pay attention. If they do, then they'll survive. Evangeline raises her hand, and she asks if they can do this after eating. He says no, and Evangeline says she's gonna lose her appetite. It jumps to later and his lecture comes to an end, after 3 hours. Everyone looks like they aren't hungry anymore. Damien asks if they'll be able to do this. Taku says while Celine was hella strong inside the dungeon, this time he'll be fighting on their home turf, so he'll be adjusted for it. He tells them all to think about the battles they've had so far, and if he is downgraded they'll be able to handle it. All of the previous battle have been close to impossible, yet they prevailed. It will be the same this time too. He's confident in winning, but he's not confident that everyone will survive this fight. He recalls everyone dying but Lucas in the game, and grits his teeth, saying he'll make sure it doesn't end that way this time. He won't let Lucas stand alone, he'll save everyone that can be saved. He tells them they have 9 days, so train accordingly and to eat well, as starting tomorrow they'll be working their asses off. It jumps to Celine hanging around waiting for the next part to come out. If you've watched till the end, comment, bear, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.